The studio is Seth Rogen's most ambitious project yet as a director. And if shooting every scene as a single unbroken take wasn't a big enough challenge, he also enlisted some intimidating talent in supporting roles. In his showbiz satire, Rogen plays conflicted Hollywood executive Matt Remick and also co-directs every episode with longtime creative partner Evan Goldberg. As his protagonist oversees a number of shaky movie productions, he crosses paths with murderers role familiar faces, some of whom are playing themselves, while others portray heightened characters inspired by megalomaniacs and oddballs who Rogen has encountered over the years. One of the funniest supporting performances comes from Bryan Cranston, who portrays Griffin Mill, the unpredictable executive above Matt in a corporate food chain. Griffin maintains surprisingly laid-back demeanor, but also urges Matt to be as vicious and unfeeling as possible, essentially encouraging Rogen's character to overpower directors and actors in the name of fiscal responsibility. What's funny is the role was originally written much more straight, Rogen tells Entertainment Weekly. It was written more like a Michael Linton type guy, a boring, scary suit kind of guy. Linton was a key executive at Sony from 2004 to 2017, the period when Rogen made films like This Is the End, The Green Hornet, and The Interview for the studio. But Rogen and his collaborators eventually realized that a stuffy, old-school businessman might not be the right take for Cranston's character, so they turned to another inspiration. It's funny, because I met David Zaslav, for example. Rogen says, invoking the Warner Brothers Discovery president who has courted controversy by permanently shelving near-complete projects like Batgirl and Coyote versus Acme for tax write-offs. He's much more like Bryan in this. He's kind of like a mover and a shaker, and he's like a fun guy, and he knows his reputation. So he wants to present himself as kind of cool and loose. But the things he's saying are anything but. Rogen says that the contradiction between the executive's chilled-out disposition and his actual business tactics became a cornerstone of the character. That dichotomy of being a cool Hollywood guy who is spewing the most commercial, anti-creative words you could possibly be saying at any given moment. That actually rang much more true to our experiences in Hollywood and made the character much less like a caricature and more like what these guys are actually like. He explains. They're social, they go to parties, they are friends with billionaires and movie stars, and they're kind of cool when you first meet them. But at the end of the day, they will FING destroy you to make $1 more than they would if they could. Griffin's combination of light-hearted comedy and threatening drama made Cranston the perfect fit for the role. His ability to be both funny and intimidating was very important, Rogen says. Someone who is kind of silly and goofy, but then on a dime locks in, and you're like, oh no, this man might kill me. And that became a very important part of the character. Another Hollywood legend who kept Rogen on his toes was Martin Scorsese, who plays himself in the series' first episode. It was very scary working with Martin Scorsese until it happened. And then it was very fun, Rogen says. I had barely ever met him. We sent him the script, and we just heard. He loves it. He's in. Rogen's nerves inspired him to hire a redundant camera crew, so the Goodfellas filmmaker wouldn't question his judgment. I was so petrified he would show up and say, "You're only shooting this with one camera? You're doing wonders," that I actually had a second camera crew sequestered away in another room, Rogen says. They were actually the camera crew from Killers of the Flower Moon. So if he got cagey with me, I knew I could just bring in these familiar faces. Rogen notes that Scorsese didn't actually disapprove of his creative decisions. It was purely based on my own fear that he would be critical of our directing choices, but he wasn't, he recalls, laughing. I was like, we do everything in one shot. As soon as he saw it, he's like, great. It's like French New Wave. I love it. It's perfect. Scorsese's presence on set ultimately proved extremely reassuring. He was so funny and great, and honestly, as soon as he came in the room, his energy was just so good that everyone just relaxed, Rogen says. But my mom called me that morning and was like, "You have to direct Martin Scorsese today. That must be terrifying. Oh my God, how nervous are you?" I was like, very. None of this is helping. The show's second episode features a similarly iconic filmmaker playing a version of himself, Ron Howard. At first, the Apollo 13 director seems like the unflappably nice guy we're all familiar with. But as the episode progresses and he comes to creative blows with Matt, Howard evolves into a laughably cruel emotionally volatile jerk that couldn't be further from his public persona. We just thought, who's the funniest person that is secretly a terrible asshole? Rogen recalls. And we sent him the script, and he really responded to it. And he was just like, honestly, I do have these moments. It's never quite like this, but things are very heated, and it's a side of me that exists in some ways. Rogen clarifies that Howard doesn't think he ever goes to such extremes as the studio version of him. He said, I would never be as malicious as a version of me in this show, but I definitely have been in these positions where the studio just doesn't get what I'm trying to do, and it's incredibly frustrating. Rogen remembers. The former Happy Days star dove headfirst into a complex, wide-ranging performance despite his limited performing experience in this phase of his career. He was saying he hadn't acted that much in a long time. He's done little things here and there, but this was a real performance. Rogen says he has to get emotional, he has to cry, and he has to get angry and all this stuff. And he just really wanted to do a good job. And he was so funny and he nailed it. Rogen continues, that last scene with him was one of the hardest scenes to shoot in the whole show. It's long, it's one take, and there's a stunt. And so that was honestly one of the most fun days because it was so challenging. But as soon as we started to get it, everyone was so excited about it. And Ron felt really great at the end of the episode, which was really validating. The first 2 episodes of the studio are now streaming on Apple TV+. New episodes will premiere every Wednesday through May 21st.